Okay, so here's the deal. Let me level with you guys. Thank you for listening. The goal of this show, the point of this podcast, if you can even call it a podcast, it's so shit. I don't even know what the definition of a podcast is, but the goal is for this show, the Daily Rants show, to be as influential on the young generation as Curious George. Now, if you don't know what Curious George is, or I should say who Curious George is, you need to click off the video. I'm sure there is some Roblox content, there's some Fortnite content that you can watch instead of this video. If you do know who Curious George is, welcome. Welcome to the Daily Rants show. This episode is about Curious George. Now, Curious George, we'll call him George. He is a real one. A real one. Curious George was a fantastic show because not only was it fun, it was entertaining and it was informative. You could learn stuff watching Curious George. And that is very, very difficult to pull off. I grew up watching a ton of PBS shows, and there were some shows that you would learn a lot, but they were so boring. They made no attempt to not seem like it was just some educational program. But Curious George, though, you went for the storyline, the characters, the intricate like processes of the world was created around. And you learned on the side. It was a show first, learning second. But I still to this day think I learned the most like science-based, math-based stuff from Curious George compared to any other show that I watched. Even like the full-on science shows. And that is good storytelling. That is how you know you have a good show. When it's a show first, educational program second. And unfortunately, Curious George is not really a part of today's youth. You know, it's very unfortunate. I've noticed that the programs of today, and I'm talking like the young programs, are truly just brain rot. Truly just brain rot. You know, I remember learning how to like tell time while watching Curious George, learning like basic words, learning time, learning seasons, learning like temperatures and stuff. But the shows today that kids are watching today, it's like, oh, the baby, got caught with his hand in the cookie jar and then his parents sing a little song and then they give him the cookie anyway. This is the death of America. Truly. This is the death of America. You know, we had a good run, almost 250 years. We almost made it 250 years. We were just a couple months short. But it is over. It is over, truly. You know, Curious George was truly like the last bastion of education and entertainment. And now it's all just entertainment, if you can even call it that. You know, I've heard that like kids graduating from high school now can't read. I don't know if I'm just like a super genius, but I knew how to read, like full on reading, like novels and stuff in like second grade max. And there's kids in high school who can't read. So let me get this straight. They take Curious George off the air. They take Curious George off the air, and just coincidentally, kids are now dumb as shit. Is this just coincidentally? Is this just all one big coincidence? So we have 250 years of kids learning in America. Maybe not 250 years ago, people were learning to read, but learning how the world works. You know, last 100 years or so, kids knew how to read. Kids learned how to read. And then as soon as they take Curious George off the air, kids are now dumb as fuck. It's all Coco Melon and Roblox and, you know, Skibbity. What is Skibbity? If you put an episode of Skibbity Toilet on and you put an episode of Curious George on, 95% of people, and by people I mean people with a brain, would watch Curious George over Skibbity Toilet. I fear for the future. Truly, I do. I truly fear for the future. You know, Curious George was truly the last hold. But now the floodgates have broken. The brain rot, cringe floodgates have broken. And all of us, you, me, the kids, everyone, will be swallowed up in the shitfest that is going to happen within the next decade or so. I mean, these kids don't know how to read. George is a fucking monkey and he can read. George, Curious George, is a fucking monkey. And he can tell the time. He can communicate not via words, but via like hand gestures and stuff. Curious George is more advanced than the average high schooler in America today. And he's a fucking monkey. We had a good run. We had a good run. I don't think the founding fathers intended for this to happen. They probably would have never bothered if they knew this was going to happen. But it's here, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm glad that you're listening to this. I'm glad. I'm glad that we were able to spend this time together before it's over, before it's all over. So I appreciate you for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow.